Hello and welcome back to another video in our Power BI Monthly Digest series. My name is Manuel Quintana.
And I'm Devin Knight. And today we're going to be looking at a bunch of new features that have come out in May of 2018.
Quite a few.
Yeah, and so what we're going to see through the features that we have for you today is a lot of them are a lot more in depth than we have had in our previous video. So last video we showed a lot of tiny little features. This one will have fewer that we're going to show, but you're going to be really excited about them for one.
Yeah. Video might be a little bit longer than the previous, but we promise these are worthwhile and exciting. That's the whole reason we're bringing it to you. So You know exactly what you want to implement right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a few things here. The first thing that we're going to start with is a feature that you're probably already familiar with called conditional formatting, right?
Everybody loves conditional formatting.
It's good stuff, but there's been some good additions as well in May, and so we want to kind of highlight a couple of those features. So try to talk briefly about what it is, and then let's go dive into how to do it.
Absolutely. In the pursuit of making everything so much easier to read and understand, the birth of conditional formatting, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're taking that another level. So the idea, the basis of conditional formatting, pick a column, say I want it to display a color based off of performance.
Okay.
So I have profit, the higher amounts of profit, green, the lower ones, red. Very basic, very simple, but it gave us something nice, tangible, something we can see. We can do the exact same thing now, but I can take a column and make it be defined by a different column now.
Oh, I like that. Okay, nice.
So we can go and choose whatever we like. We're going to see in our example, we're going to do something with a matrix and have it be dictated by a different column entirely.
Okay.
And now that's just one piece of it. After I show that example, I'm going to show you a new thing.
Oh, I like that. So let's go ahead and get started, I think.
Absolutely. Let's adventure over here to our example. And we're going to see that we have this matrix visual right here.
It's a pretty basic report, boring report to start off with, but we're going to make this sexy, right?
Exactly. It's one of those nice things, a quick feature that adds a lot of life to what we're seeing already. Yeah. So, and that's the idea, matrix. Lots of information, lot to take in. Conditional lets us know where we want to draw our eye to.
Gotcha.
So in our case, we're going to focus on specifically this value on here, the units, which are these values we see displayed within the matrix. And this is going to be pretty standard. I'm going to hit the drop down, click conditional formatting. I'm going to do this background color scales. So far, everything's the same.
Yeah.
But you'll notice right away, right in the center, that's the new element.
Yeah, the color based on, right? That's a new field. That wasn't there before.
And that's where we can say, and by default, it's always going to choose whatever column you selected. That's going to automatically be populated in there by default. But I can make a choice. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do this by profit. So we're selling a bunch of units, but what we're selling, is it making us money? That's the idea there. So I'm going to change this to profit. I'm going to go and take advantage of the color by rules, which was introduced a little bit ago as well, and set it up. So I'm going to say is greater than or equal to, and I'm going to go, I'll go 200,000 for me. And then I'm going to remove the 0 here and just have it grab whatever the maximum is. So these are my good sellings. So let's go ahead and make it something like green. And then here, I'm going to say is greater than or equal to minimum, so whatever that lowest value is. And we'll do here 200,000. So pretty simple range, and that'll be my red, my non-competitors, my non-producers here. And just with that click of a button, we can see that we've got that nice display here presented to us, right? We can see the difference of, number of units. That doesn't necessarily tell us it's great. We're looking for the green. What's making us money? We can see some of these lower values. They are still green, even though there's some that are above it. This is the key. Make something quick, easy, so we can digest it.
I like it. So you got another example here on the right-hand side with a table.
Yeah.
Right? So, and what are we going to see differently in this one?
Absolutely. So another piece of this conditional formatting change is going to be that it's adding something new to the bundle. Right? Before, we had that drop-down capability only for values, so numeric values, right? Conditional formatting, inviting more to the party. We can now do this for text and date.
Great, yeah, that'd be great. So the idea here would be I can place some kind of conditional formatting on like the salesperson name.
Exactly right.
Okay.
How many units have they sold? Well, of what they're selling, is it making me money?
Right.
That's the idea here. So
it's great. I can see the units, but I also want to see some kind of indicator based on profit, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So we'll do the same thing. We'll go and define salesperson, but we'll have it be formatted by profits.
Okay. Yeah, great.
And normally, when we would hit the drop-down next to any sort of date or text field, we'd never even see this. Now it's there. It's available to us. I can do this and do font color scales, change this based off of profit. In this case, we won't do any rules. We'll just let this just do the traditional coloring format, the scheme here. We hit OK, and there we go. Once
nice.
Again,
I like that.
Ready, available, and I can see who's doing well. We got a couple Hudsons there, Kayla and Amy. They're delivering.
I like
They're
it.
delivering. So a feature already widely in use, not more ways to take advantage of it.
I like that. All right, great. So our next feature we're going to look at then is going to be around slicers, and specifically a feature that was released a while back has some improvements to it again. So another similar example. This time we're going to be looking at the sync slicers feature that allows you basically to synchronize a slicer across multiple report pages.
Yes.
And so that feature's still there, of course, but they've made some additions to it, right?
Yep. So, I mean, of course, the idea there, you're going to probably have multiple pages in a report.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility that you will have effectively the same slicer might be prevalent across it. Maybe you're doing something with time, right? You're going to have a set amount of years that's in a slicer, and you want that on pages A through Z, right? Every single one. Instead of adding those in, then having the individuality of them, just having to kind of dictate what's happening on each page, we can sync them.
Right.
So that was the feature that was introduced. Nothing's changed in that regard, but now we have this capability. It's called an advanced drop-down within that section, and we can apply a group name to it.
Oh, okay. Nice. So what's the purpose of that? What does that give us?
Well, really now we can take however many slicers we like. So the idea of having one slicer that appears on multiple pages that we can configure, and that configuration kind of takes hold and the filters go across the other pages, we can associate other slicers into the picture and have those be part of that same group.
Okay, so kind of the group has a set of settings.
Correct.
And when you configure the group settings, which really are whenever you select a slicer, that will apply to every slicer in the group.
Exactly.
Okay, nice. I like that.
So slicer 1, 2, and 3, part of group A. 4, 5, and 6, part of group B.
Okay, yeah,
so
makes sense.
So we can separate them like that.
Yeah.
So really to help out in the development side of things, and also from the consumption side too.
Great, so let's take a look.
So I've left us a little room here, right on the same page we are working with, and the first one I'm going to work with is just a very simple list slicer of our regions.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and I'm going to hit the slicer option, and I'm going to choose region here, and I'm going to just consolidate, because we're going to bring in a second one after, but I've got this set. If I go over to the view here, which we're in, I can hit sync slicers, which brings up that pane. And this is what we're used to and we've seen. Now, the easiest way to get this set, you can see I have only 2 pages, but if I want to have a second slicer, basically in the sync slicers page, the other one we're not looking at, if I would like this to be there and filtering, I can just go to the top and hit add and sync with all pages.
Okay.
So technically, this slicer here now is going to control the filters of the one we're looking at and the other page we don't see. Let me click Great Lakes so I can show you. This has been filtered. Sync slicers has also been filtered.
Okay.
We can see that.
Right.
The slicer itself is not there, but that is simply just a feature that I've decided to set up in that way. That's this little box we see on the right side. Right side is visibility of the slicer, and the left side is do we want it actually to pass through those actual filter options.
Okay.
So for me, I'm actually going to add that in there so we can see it. So as we can see, it's over here now, and we can go back and forth and filter however we see fit.
Nice.
All standard and what's normal, what's been already in existence. But now, as we mentioned, the advanced options. Because I chose that add and sync with all pages, I created a second visual based off of this, a second slicer based off of this. It's already created a group for me.
Okay.
So these ones, in this case, these 2 slicers have been added to the region group. It just takes the default name of that visual.
Gotcha.
But now, if I add a third slicer in play, and I want it to, and it relates to the type of filters I'm employing here, I can just type in region and make it part of that group as well.
Okay.
So here's where we can go ahead. I'm going to add another slicer in here. We're going to have it just kind of fit nice in the bottom corner here, and I'm going to use units. So that numeric range slicer we covered in the last video, I've got it here. I'm going to go ahead and add this to region.
So you're grouping them together now, and you can see as soon as you did that, I'm kind of pointing at the screen, they can't see that of course, but as soon as you did that, those settings now match what you had on the previous slicer because it's added to that group. And so you can see that in where your mouse is, all of the items that you had selected in the first slicer now match up with the second slicer. So they're going to be synced up. No matter what you do with one, it's going to happen to the other.
Yeah, they're saved at the group name level.
Right.
So that has now been inherited, and now once again, these are all joined together with this group name.
Nice.
And we can do this if I had a bunch of other slicers. I could have a different group entirely and have a different subset of slicers in that direction.
I like it. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next feature that we're going to look at, again, has to do with visualizing your data. And we're going to be looking at something as a feature that applies to both combo charts that have column and line charts or to just line charts by themselves. And the idea here that we're going to look at is the ability to actually make the line so thin, or basically make it non-existent, that you can have points show up on your map.
Correct. Yep.
Not map, but visual. And so I think this is an interesting one because it really makes the visual turn into something completely different than what a typical line chart would be. Because typically you think of a line chart as being used for showing trends in your data, showing things over time. But maybe you don't have a trend element to your data, and you just want to use the line for the points that exist at each exchange of data there.
Yes.
And so I think that's pretty cool. So what are you going to be able to show us here?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly what you've mentioned is exactly correct. I mean, there's going to be a time and a place when you're looking at it over time, so your standard line will make sense because there is a trend.
Right.
But there's times when you're going to use that combo chart and you just want to compare two measures to each other, like what we see here in this visual, right? I'm showing average profit per unit and then the total profit that we've made. The line here holds no sway.
Right.
It really
it's
has
not really a trend.
no meaning.
Yeah.
I just want to compare the 2 points. So we can remove that line element now very easily by controlling a property in the format area known as stroke width.
Okay.
So that's where we're going to go. We're going to select that visual, head over to the format area. Under shapes, we're going to see just here there is a stroke width. And just by taking this down, before we could reduce this, but we never had the option to go to 0.
Okay, so now the line's all gone all together.
It's gone.
But you can still see the points because we had some labels turned on. So the points do exist there somewhere. So now how would we see those points visualized in some way?
From a feature here at the very bottom called Show Marks.
Okay.
So by doing this, the default is going to be just a traditional circular dot with the black font, the black coloration there. But we're in control of this. We can see that there's the shape itself. I could do something like a square, more of a neutral shape, and make it more pronounced by maybe taking a deeper red color here.
I like that.
We can have that announced. But now it's very easy. Within each interval here, so in this case, for each of our values for the category, regions, I can see how much profit we're making and what is the average profit per unit sold. Right there, readily, easily consumable by the end user.
Great. So the new feature there being that you can set the line width to 0, basically.
Exactly right. And specifically for this combo chart, I love enabling labels on this type of a chart.
Yeah.
But when you have the line in there too, there's a lot of clutter going on.
Right.
And this gets rid of that. A little bit cleaner interface. So even though there's no official visual in this release, I feel like this gives...
It's almost like a new visual, yeah.
Yeah, it gives a whole new sensation to that combo chart.
Yeah, I like it.
So, yeah.
Very cool. So, all right, our next feature then that we're going to look at, again, is a kind of a fan favorite that's been around for a while, but has had some additions and some changes to it, which is drill through.
Absolutely.
So with drill through, what are we going to see new with drill throughs that we couldn't do before?
Well, right off the bat, you're going to notice that it's been given its own section.
Oh, good.
Everyone loves it so much, I guess. I mean, I know I do, but it's going to be in its own area, but there's a very specific reason why.
Okay.
Right? And really the way we can best explain this is to remember and understand the traditional way of setup. So I'll do a quick one, but then I'll show you guys as well. You create a page itself, and where it used to be in its own where you used to have filters, it used to say drill through, and you would select a field and drop that in there. Effectively, this was, I like to consider it as a catcher, waiting to receive a filter for the category you've told it.
Okay, that's good.
So if I say region, I'm waiting to catch a value of region.
Okay.
So in any other page, when we choose a data point, we now can right-click and say, pass this through to my drill through report. And now the filter context, anything related to region, will be passed along and said report will be filtered. But what if that point is from a matrix like we have?
Yeah, right. So a matrix has a lot of different cross sections of the data. I think the one that we were looking at had a salesperson on the columns, and on rows it had region and state. So there's a lot of things built into that, right?
That would effectively, everything other than region would be ignored. Unless we took the time and the effort to actually add in each individual field into the drill through area.
Gotcha. So I think what would be interesting if you can show us on this one is how it worked before, and then how it's going to work now, how potentially could work for us now.
Absolutely. And we're going to see it's really fun. It's literally turning a button on.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. That makes it easy.
So here we find ourselves. We're in that same visualization. This is going to be our drill through report here.
Okay.
So if we go ahead and we go down, we're going to see its own section. Now, the feature that we're talking about, it's actually right here. It says keep all filters. We'll sneak to that in a second, but I'm going to turn it off so we can see the default behavior. Let's do what we talked about in the example.
The default behavior being what we were used to before, right?
Exactly. By hitting this off.
This is actually going to be on by default going forward.
It does.
Okay.
Every new page that you create, it's automatically on.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to do what we described. I'm going to bring in a region. So anywhere where I choose a data point that contains a region filter context, this will inherit that and it will filter it.
Okay.
So now let's go back over to our first page. we have this matrix. We can see New York here, right? This value of 45,716. The city, the state is New York, and the region is Mid-East.
And then we got a salesperson of Anthony Gross.
So if I right-click, I'm going to pass through to my other page. We're going to see that the only thing that's brought through is the region, the Mid-East, which is fine. This is how I set this up. I chose that to be the only thing that will affect this. Notice the amount of units, 444,000.
Yeah, I would have expected to see 45 or whatever the number was there.
That was the value in that specific intersection point.
Okay.
Well, if I look at this, I'm like, oh, you know what? I want everything. And instead of taking the time, like having to take the time to figure it out, like what are all the fields I need? I can just say, hey, I want you to accept all the pieces, all the filter context that come along with the point that you selected. I want those to apply here.
Okay, all right, I like that.
All I need to do, turn it on.
That's it. And then you said this is on by default.
This is on by default. So keep all filters. That is the setting. That's the label of the setting. Now, if I go back and do exactly what we did without adding anything here. See here, I'm not going to add anything at all. We're looking for that 45,000 mark. We see it right away in the card visual. And if we really dive into the drill through section, it's very slight, but you might notice region is kind of in a standard text, like a block text there, and it has Mideast, that was it. And notice salesperson, it's actually, I wouldn't say fully italicized, but it's got that slant.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't notice that, yeah.
And it has our salesperson, Anthony Gross, and of course New York as the state. Those ones that are slanted to the side are effectively extra filters that were brought along with a data point that I didn't kind of have, that I didn't set up myself. But it's here. It takes everything that I've chosen really cool. and brings it over.
I really like that. That makes it a lot easier for people too that maybe don't necessarily know in depth of how the drill through works. They just know they want to do a drill through. They see a drill through section there. They're going to drag in something. But this is going to help them kind of natively work.
Yes.
So I hear there's something else to this as well, right? So this is great. This is kind of following along the lines of how drill through worked previously, but with a little added new feature. But there's another element to this as well, where you can now do measure drill through, or drill through on measures.
Correct.
So how does that work?
Yeah, before all you could do is you had to drag in those categorical fields. Well, now, let me get rid of the filters that we've applied. Now you can drag in any measure, and that would be either implicit or explicit. So if you create your own with DAX, but here you can see I have this implicit measure, right? Units is being summed up. So I can now drag that right into the drill through, and it'll be brought right in. And by default, we're looking at the summarized values of this, which is pretty typical. I'm going to say majority of us are going to be leveraging this element, but for implicit measures, we also have the capability of using it as a category.
Okay, so that would be maybe a column that happens to be a numeric value that Power BI is trying to summarize, maybe like year.
Correct.
I wouldn't actually summarize year, but because it's a numeric value, it comes through as an implicit measure. And what I may want to do instead, the right answer is go into the model and fix it so it doesn't summarize it. But in case I didn't do that, I could actually come here and tell it to use as category.
Exactly right.
And so rather than summing year, it would have a distinct list of years to choose from for the filter. Okay, gotcha.
And everything else from this point, it functions the same. So you're going to see as soon as I go over here and I go and find Mr. Anthony Gross and pull it through, always going to work, but now we're going to have 3 additional filter, region, state, as well as salesperson. Those were brought over. Those were part of the intersecting point that I did.
Yeah, I like that method. So select some of the measures that are your most popular, put them in the drill through section, and then you could easily navigate to those and use the filter context of what you're looking at to pass through to your drill through. I really like that one.
Yeah, this really allows for a wider variety. So in all of my other report pages, I can have a ton of variety at my disposal, knowing that no matter where I click, it's going to filter my drill through reports.
I like that. That's a really cool one.
Yeah.
So that's a nice new feature. The next one that we're going to look at, though, is going to be a feature we're going to look at that's in preview. So this one has to do with a certain type of data connector that I'm a big fan of, and I think you are as well.
Oh, yeah.
And it has to do with the from web connection. So one of the things I like about this one is, you're not going to base an entire data set around the web connector likely. But what you might do is you might use the web connector as a supplement to a data source you already have. So you have kind of your internal company data, and then I want to go pull in some data from the web to kind of supplement that and help me make a decision. And so one of the nice things that they've changed is they've made some better usability enhancements, I guess. Or I don't know how you would describe it. How would you describe the changes here?
I would describe it probably in the way that all of us as users wanted the web to work, right? It's great. Trust me, I use this. Whenever I use this, I love it. But there are occasions when the URL that you input, how it's reading it and how it's bringing it out, doesn't get you exactly what you're looking for. But then they added that web preview, right? A tab that shows you the web page. And even with that, sometimes you would see something and be like, but I want that.
I want that table, not this table.
Please, please.
Give me those values, yeah.
That is kind of what this feature lets us do.
Interesting.
And you're going to see the way that this feature is named, that it is kind of taking advantage of a different feature that was introduced, I would say, maybe 6 or 7 months ago.
Okay.
It's the add column from examples.
Oh, yes. That's one of my favorites as well, yeah.
Yeah. So they've taken that element, and you can now create a logic that allows the web source to pull information out of that URL.
So you're saying you can provide an example of the way you want the data to look like from a web source and it to pull out that specific area of the data rather than maybe what Power BI thinks you're looking for.
Exactly.
Oh, man, I'm excited about this.
It's pretty cool.
So set the stage a little bit for us on this one. The data set we're going to be looking at, this is actually, we're going to shift a little bit to a new data set.
Yes.
This is going to be movie data, and we're looking at a website called Box Office Mojo. And that website has in it pages of results,
Correct.
right? So talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll bring up the website so we can have it here in the background. But effectively, and if anyone watching this video has been to our training, hello, we've gone through this example. And one of the ideas is, right, in this case, there's 736 movies in its entirety.
Yeah.
But it breaks it up into increments of 100. Naturally, the last one's a little bit shy, but it's because they keep adding.
Right.
Well, the reason why we did this was to show how you can customize how a source pulls information and use a function basically to iterate over values.
Okay.
So our URL had a number. It said page number 2. Basically, we wanted it to say page number 1, 2, all the way till 8.
Because there's 8 pages of results. We need to be able to iterate over each page to pull out results. Okay, gotcha.
And we did it. It's able to be done successfully, but we ended up manually creating a list that said 1 through 8.
Okay.
So it works, but what happens when the website keeps adding more and they get to a 9th page?
Movies
800 through 899. Exactly right. We'd have to add that manually. And that's not the case. The goal is, and the magic word is always dynamic.
Yeah,
right?
I like that. Yes.
If we can make Power BI work for us, that just makes everybody happier.
Yeah.
So that's what this gives us the capability. Now we can search for, and this rather, you see this number sign, 1 through 100? It looks a little odd. We can see that's what we need, but initially, the way the web source worked, it wasn't picking that up. But watch what I can do now with the new web source, right? Let me take this URL, go ahead and copy this. Now head back over to our example, and I'm going to do everything normal to begin with. Get data, go to web. We're going to paste this right in. And then here, within the navigator, we're going to find our new experience. So here, normal, right? Table view, web view, this is what I was talking about. You could look and be, oh, I see it, I want that.
And a lot of people don't realize that web view is even there, so that might be new for them. Yeah.
This is always when I couldn't find it, I'd be like, no, but it's there, please. Well, now we can. We can take this power into our own control where we can say extract table using examples.
Okay.
There's that kind of like play on words. And we're going to see, it's going to bring us to a display where there's a preview at the top. And really just a blank setup at the bottom.
Yeah, it looks like an inner data field here.
Yeah. So at first you might be like, ooh, what do I need to enter all this? No. We need to provide it, the logic. Well, how do we want the data to look? So we can look through here and kind of look and be like, okay, well, I know I want some of this action. I want this to be broken down. So let me start to type this in. 1 through 100. And it's fine. Don't be alarmed. We need to set up the complete logic, right? There's a chance this could be existing somewhere else in the page. We need to show the pattern here.
Right.
So as soon as I do a second entry, I go 101 to 200.
Oh, I like that. Whoa, how did it get that? That's very cool.
And notice it acquired this even with this type of horizontal carriage return line feed setup here, right? 401 to 500 in my display is like on different lines and everything.
Right.
It's able to parse this out. You could grab, if you wanted a list of subjects, daily, weekend, weekly, we could go that route too.
Oh, that's cool.
It really gives us that control that we've been looking for in the web source.
And the nice thing I like about this too is, like you said, this gives you more control, whereas we would have normally gotten this list of all of the movies. Now you're pulling a list of what you really want in this scenario is you want to get a list of the number of pages, basically.
That's exactly right. And we can really do this. For now, for what I need to make my query dynamic, to bring back all 736 movies, I've actually got the essential information. So I can go ahead here and hit OK. We're going to see this is just going to bring in another query just with one column, very simple. But I'm going to take advantage of this and effectively do a row count here. Right? There's a built-in piece of functionality, just an index column. So I'm going to add a new column with starting from 1, incrementing by 1.
Okay.
And we can see it. So these are my page numbers.
I'm seeing the vision here now.
This is it.
So you're going to plug this column into the URL that had the page number equals in it.
Exactly.
And be able to iterate over each page. I'm starting to see it. Okay.
So all that's left is we're going to invoke the function, which lets me pass a value through to that URL. The value we're going to pass through is, this is my function, and we're going to pass through the index column value. And see how quick that was?
That was quick, yeah.
I'm going to expand this, and we are done.
Wow, so you're saying we're now looking at 8 different pages of results, so you could scroll down, you'd start to see more pages.
We can see at the bottom, there's 736 rows. And then when they get all excited and they move on to the next section, when they move on to 800, 900 movies, this is ready to go. When you refresh this, it's going to pick that up. We're going to get the next number in the index. That's going to get passed through to the function.
Wow.
It's the beautiful Power BI circle of life.
That's really powerful.
Absolutely. Now, just because I need to, let me go ahead and rename this. This is every movie, because it's going to always be keeping it up to date. So for any of you who are with me on those classes, now we know how to finish that example in a much better way.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very great way. All right, so the very last feature that we're going to show you is probably the one that has been most looked forward to by everyone watching, everyone that's played around with Power BI for any amount of time. You've likely thought, this is great, but I have so much data that I need a way to incrementally load it or incrementally refresh it, so that rather than
to my ears, those words.
rather than loading 10 million or even billions of rows every single time I do a refresh, because that's how refreshes work right now, is it's a refresh of everything every single time. I'd rather have some way of making that more of an incremental process.
Yes.
And there's a way to do that, right?
There absolutely is, right? This is a pretty big implementation, and as we were mentioning, this is preview currently, so definitely I think we're going to see some heavier documentation and some updates on this process.
Yeah.
But yes, we can actually, in the traditional fashion for any developers out there, those running SSIS packages, whatever it might be, it's going to follow that same logic, that same process, where we can say, look at this column. I want to grab information that's equal to or greater than this point in time and less than this point in time. And then that is a shifting range.
So you're saying it's based off of dates. We have to have some kind of date that we're leveraging.
Yes.
Another big caveat to this feature is what?
So right now, when we get this, with this May updates, it is going to be available for those who have access to the premium service.
Okay, so Power BI Premium. Okay.
So this feature is going to be only for the premium service, I guess, members would be the way we can describe that.
So you can kind of, if you're not a premium member, you can still walk through the steps of what to do here, but when it comes to publishing it to the Power BI service, you will be prompted to point it to a workspace that's on premium storage. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see the very iconic diamond icon when we go through this process, and when you hit publish, it's going to tell you, choose a premium workspace for that.
Gotcha.
But this is its first iteration, and we're really excited just to see this make its introduction into Power BI. It's going to be fantastic, from an efficiency perspective, right? So we won't be able to go through the entirety of this demonstration because it'd be rather long, right? The whole desktop side and the service side, but we're going to show you the meat of it.
Later video, right?
Yeah, we'll show you the meat on where does it show up, how does it look, right inside the desktop tool. So let's go over an adventure there. So we're going to stay in that same example that we have. There are some small prerequisites, and don't worry, you are very much reminded of this if you just dive right in. As soon as you turn on the preview feature, you'll notice when you right-click any of the tables, you have this incremental refresh. But if you do not have 2 specific elements already situated, it will tell you, hey, you need to go do this. And what that is?
Yeah, so you have to have 2 date parameters, date-time parameters that are called range start and range end.
Yes.
And so can you show in our query editor, we have created those 2 parameters already. So you can see range start, range end as date-time parameters. And then you need to apply these parameters to your query. So within the query itself, if we go find our query real quickly here, you'll see we have a filter or we can apply a filter to our date column here. And the filter that we would apply would be a custom filter, and then we would reference the parameters right here. So you would change this where you would say greater than or equal to, or excuse me, you'd say is after or equal to, and then you'd select the parameter, and then you do the same thing for the bottom one. You'd select, in this case, you'd say is before, and then pick the parameter for the range end. So you would set this up. We've already done this for this example, so we don't need to do it again, but that's a key thing to note that needs to be set up before you can do this.
So with that in place, we can go ahead and right-click and then leverage the incremental refresh. There's that little icon that I promised you, just always serve as a little reminder. But here now, I've chosen, and you can move between the tables, like we have 2 tables, so I'm only going to choose this one. If we notice every movie that says, hey, you haven't set up the parameters, you can't do it. So the one we have, I can turn it on, and then we can move down and set up just a couple of options, but naturally required, right? The first one, when we're talking with tons of data, is how much data do we want to keep? So we're going to see we're given multiple intervals here, day, month, year. So let's say I only want to keep the last 5 years. I can simply indicate the interval and then the value. So it's going to be rolling. As if we hit 5 years, when the next day applies, the oldest date will drop off.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then next, very critical, is what are we looking to refresh, all right? What is that date range? So this is definitely going to be a lot shorter interval. You're probably going to do something a little bit smaller. So I just want to refresh the last 3 days of data.
Okay, that makes sense.
But there's another piece, right? We're going to be talking about deltas.
Okay, so updates and changes in our data. Gotcha.
Correct. So if I have something that is 10 days ago, right, that's not within these last 3 days that we've just mentioned, I've already have that data, but maybe I make an amendment, a change to one of the fields within there.
And maybe your data set has like a modified date column or something like that to pick that up. Okay.
So I guess that would be another prerequisite, right? Not only do you have a date, which dictates when we're going to pick to load this by, but also something that picks up on changes. You do need to have that, because as soon as I hit this box, we're going to see that's a drop-down saying, okay, well, what is the column that represents the changes? So I do happen to have a modified date.
Makes sense. Yeah, okay. I get it. Yeah, so if you come from more of a traditional BI background, some of these concepts probably make sense to you already. If you've done more of an ETL process of doing incremental loads and refreshes, then this probably isn't a completely new concept to you, but it is a new concept to a lot of folks that are in Power BI that haven't had to do that before.
With this, we're effectively doing an upsert.
Gotcha.
Handling the updates and the inserts all together.
Gotcha.
Now there's one small little box that remains. Now this one right down here, it's not going to be for everybody, right? Even if you read it out, only refresh complete days. That context is actually controlled right here. If I choose whatever interval I choose, you'll notice that is going to amend both the detect data changes, and the completion at the bottom. What we're really talking about here is the idea of a completed day. So if I had to give a specific example, it would be, let's look at something from a business perspective that you don't want to define until it's over, like the stock exchange.
Okay, yeah.
The value of which a stock closes on a business day shouldn't be determined at 11 a.m. in the morning of that day, should it?
Right.
So here we can turn this on and enables and set this up that Monday, the value for that stock, it's going to be supplied, it's going to be finalized when that day has officially completed.
Okay, I see. So this is some kind of indicator to only refresh when the day is actually completed.
Correct. Correct.
Makes sense.
Definitely situational, but the option is there. And the fact that this is on its kind of first, V1 representation, not even since it's in preview, it's just nice to see the full depth that's going to be allowed to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So really exciting, and we love seeing this come into Power BI.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, I don't think we said this explicitly, so I want to make sure I say it again, is those parameters that we did have to set up, you do have to use the name range start and range end. Those are actually reserved words inside of Power BI parameters for leveraging incremental refreshes. So you do need to make sure you use those names to take advantage of this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important, very important.
So I hope it excites you guys like it does us. We're super excited. These features are incredibly cool. Some things that you've been waiting for a long time. You've seen and probably even submitted to idea forums around these new things you're seeing today. They're absolutely great, and I appreciate you showing them to us today. I think these were great. For you guys, what we would recommend, if you subscribe to pragmaticworks.com, our YouTube channel, and make sure you set up your notifications to receive notifications whenever we do these new videos. Yep. But we'll continue to do these. We got a lot of great feedback our first one. Yeah. And we want to thank you for joining us this month for the Power BI Monthly Digest. We look forward to showing you some new stuff next month. Thanks a lot.
Take care.